Bill O'Reilly. You definitely know the name, and you probably know the controversy. But here's the thing. Beyond the cable news desk, he's a publishing giant. He's done something most historians only dream of. He's gotten millions and millions of people to actually read about the past. But the big question is, what kind of history are they really getting?
First, let's just get our heads around the sheer scale of this. This number, nearly 8 million, that's just for his killing series alone. Killing Lincoln, Killing Patton, Killing Jesus, you name it. These books completely dominate the bestseller lists, so you just can't deny his massive, massive impact on how a lot of people in America think about history today. But, and this is a huge but, here's the central conflict. For all that incredible success, O'Reilly gets constantly slammed by professional historians. They argue his work is just riddled with mistakes and that he's presenting a version of the past that's, way more fiction than fact. So, who's right? The 8 million people buying the books or the academic experts?
Okay, to try and figure that out, let's start by looking at the case the critics are making. And it's not just some vague dislike for the guy. Historians point to some very specific and pretty serious flaws in the way O'Reilly puts these stories together. A huge criticism, especially when it comes to his book Killing Jesus, is how he treats the ancient Roman historians. He often just takes them at their word, but any historian will tell you that's a rookie mistake. A lot of these ancient writers weren't like journalists trying to be objective. They were more like ancient gossip columnists, pushing propaganda or settling scores for their bosses. Critics say O'Reilly just presents their most scandalous tales as if they're undisputed facts. The second big point the critics make is that his books always seem to choose drama over accuracy. Look, they're written to read like these fast-paced thrillers, which is obviously great for sales, but that often means a sensational detail gets picked over a verifiable one. The goal, it seems, is excitement, even if the actual facts get a little blurry along the way. Let's take a specific example from Killing Lincoln. O'Reilly paints this incredibly vivid, dramatic picture of Mary Surratt, one of the conspirators in Lincoln's assassination. He describes her being chained up, treated horribly on a ship, but critics fire back saying, hold on, that's a misstatement of the facts. They argue he's using it to push this unproven idea that Lincoln's own government was somehow involved. It makes for a great story, for sure, but they argue it's just not accurate history. And maybe the most shocking example comes from Killing Patton. In that book, O'Reilly actually pushes the conspiracy theory that General George Patton was assassinated on the orders of Joseph Stalin. Now, historians are pretty much unanimous in saying no way. They point out that Patton was already dying from injuries he got in a car crash. So for critics, this is another classic case of a wild, sensational theory just completely trumping the actual evidence. All right, so that's the case against him. But to be fair, we have to try and understand what O'Reilly himself says he's trying to do. For him, writing history isn't just about listing off facts from the past. He truly believes he's on a mission. O'Reilly really frames his work as a kind of counter-narrative. In his mind, the mainstream media is corrupt, it's full of spin, and his books are his way of finally setting the record straight. He sees himself as a truth teller, fighting against a world of lies. And right at the very heart of that mission is this idea of evil. In his book, Confronting Evil, he boils it all down to this one simple definition. See, for him, this isn't about complex historical forces or geopolitical nuance. It's a much simpler moral framework. It's good versus evil, plain and simple. And when you understand that, it really reframes his entire project. His goal isn't really academic. It's more like a call to arms. He's using history to show that bad people have always existed and that it's the duty of good people to stand up and confront them. It's a moral lesson for today, just drawn from the dramas of the past. So what does this mission actually look like on the page? Let's take a look at the method in action, and we can use his latest book, Confronting Evil, as our guide here. Well, the scope is epic. He draws this direct line from ancient tyrants like Caligula and Genghis Khan, right through 20th century dictators like Hitler and Stalin, all the way to modern figures like the drug lord El Chapo and the terrorist group Hamas. He's building this one single overarching story of evil that spans all of human history. And his writing style is just incredibly visceral. I mean, listen to this description of Caligula. It's written in the present tense, it's graphic, it's absolutely designed to provoke a strong emotional reaction. This is that thriller style the critics talk about, and you can't deny it is super effective at grabbing your attention. And he applies the exact same technique to modern events. This description of the October 7th attack, it reads just like an action movie script. It puts you, the reader, right in the middle of the moment, framing a really complex geopolitical event as a simple, brutal fight between good and evil.
So all this brings us to the final verdict. And honestly, it's not one that's going to be delivered by critics or even by O'Reilly himself. It's really up to you, the reader. Is he a flawed historian who makes the past accessible to millions? Or is he a moral storyteller who's just using history as his stage? This whole debate isn't just about books. It's about what we want from history itself. The critics offer this piece of advice. They're not really saying, don't read the books. They're saying, read them critically, use them as a starting point, understand the perspective, but then go do your own research. It's basically a call for media literacy. And in the end, O'Reilly puts this challenge directly to his readers by quoting the philosopher John Stuart Mill. This is his final argument, that history isn't some passive subject you just learn about. It's a call to action, and it leaves us with a really provocative thought. In the fight against evil, how much does factual precision really matter compared to having moral clarity? And where do you draw that line?